9:50 a.m. local time. The sky erupted in light, as 8 fiery tongues burst forth like lightning. From a Staroguzhchi-class missile frigate, the launch came without warning. Each missile carried a high-explosive warhead, weighing about 1,540 pounds. They streaked toward the port of Berdyansk on the coast of Zada. Instantly, the air defense system was activated, triggering an early warning. Alarm sirens echoed across the port, as the sky flared like a giant flash of lightning. Moments later, 5 F-16 fighter jets shot forward like lances, locking onto their targets in seconds. Then came the launch command. In this life-or-death moment for the Navy, fate itself would soon decide. 9:22 a.m. local time. The surface of the Azov Sea was calm as glass. A Staroguzhchi-class missile frigate departed Sevastopol harbor, heading directly toward Ukraine's Berdyansk port. The vessel measured about 341 feet long, with a displacement of 2,200 tons. Nearly 100 crew members were on board. 8 vertical launch tubes were neatly aligned, each containing 3 M14 cruise missiles. Each missile had a maximum range of 1,860 miles. Each carried a 1,540-pound warhead. According to estimates, the ship's combined firepower could cripple an entire harbor or completely destroy a major fuel depot. Beyond its missiles, the ship was equipped with an array of sensors and 3 DFKF radar systems, 1 A-190 naval cannon for surface attack, and an AK-630 close-in defense system. It also carried fuel, rations, repair tools, and spare parts, all combined into a single war machine, worth approximately $210 million. Its destination lay along the Berdyansk coastline, about 12 nautical miles away, roughly 13.8 miles, just enough for the cruise missiles to establish a safe firing position, while still remaining within the direct line of sight of the primary target of the assault. The primary target was the fuel depot at Berdyansk's main pier, a critical transport hub on the northern shores of the Azov Sea. If this strategic site were destroyed, it could cripple both military and trade supply chains. In roughly 30 minutes, the ship would reach its ideal launch zone. Preparations were carried out swiftly. Every second counted. On deck, sailors moved with sharp precision, their faces expressionless, eyes fixed on the ticking clock. They checked each launch sequence in silence. On the operations board, a list of target coordinates appeared in tight formation. 9:22 was not just the time of departure. It marked the beginning of a chain of decisions that could reshape the balance of power. On the strategic map, 8 vertical launch tubes stood armed, each missile packed with roughly 1,540 pounds of explosives. The 12 nautical mile range, about 13.8 miles, hung in the air like a warning bell. Every number struck a nerve across the deck. The question loomed: could Berdyansk withstand such an assault? Would its air defenses and ground-based countermeasures react in time to stop the attack? At 9:40 a.m., the frigate approached the target zone. A crewman reported, 10 minutes to launch position. The bridge fell silent. Only the deep hum of generators filled the air. Indicator lights blinked rhythmically across the control panels. 9:50. The vessel held steady, 12 nautical miles off the coast. The commander gave the order, 3 minutes to launch. On deck, the 8 launch tubes and guidance systems, inertial and satellite alike, were fully calibrated. Defense radars had detected abnormal signals. Warning sirens blared across the entire base. But there was no panic. That was the result of a multi-layered integrated defense network. 9:53 a.m. Launch order confirmed. The launch button was pressed. The cover released. 8 silos burst open in an instant. Missiles roared into the sky simultaneously. 8 trails of smoke streaked straight toward land. The first second became an irreversible moment in history. Trajectories locked in. Inertial systems and propulsion guidance took full control of each warhead. Each missile was a capsule of fire and pressure, carrying a combined payload of roughly 12,300 pounds of explosives, each locked precisely onto the fuel port packed with volatile materials. When the numbers involve a fuel depot, they cease to be just statistics. They become commands, capable of unleashing destruction in an instant. The onboard recorder displayed 9 hours 50 minutes and 12 seconds. The coastline was no longer a static backdrop, but a living network of sensors. The VMBGM 400 radar picked up heat signatures. Observation posts spotted the smoke trails. Within seconds, that data was transmitted to command headquarters. The tiny dots on the screen were no longer mere readings. They were calls to action awaiting execution. The defensive response toward Berdyansk was immediately initiated. Short and medium-range air defense systems, including the Patriot batteries, were activated. These systems, designed for layered protection, were co-developed by the United States and Norway and delivered to the Ukrainian armed forces. In May 2024, they included the Jada Sentinel-A Fire Control Center, MPQ-64 radar, and modular launchers, capable of carrying various missile types. Their range, roughly 18 miles, 30 kilometers. The Patriot Pack, 3-handled medium and long-range defense. Equipped with active phased array radar, detection range, around 62 miles, 100 kilometers, with a strike range of 25 miles, 40 kilometers. These two systems did not operate independently. They were linked through a shared data network, acting as both the eyes and of the battlefield command structure. Together, they formed a tight interception grid across the sky. 9:55 a.m. The interceptors launched simultaneously. The NASAMS system fired its ground-based AMRAAM missiles. Meanwhile, the Patriot batteries completed their targeting sequence for long-range engagement. The interceptors soared upward, cutting across the inbound trajectories high above the sea. A blinding white flash erupted in the sky. Fragments scattered in all directions before sinking into the deep. Almost the entire wave of incoming missiles was destroyed. The interception success rate reached an astonishing 95%. That number alone shattered the enemy's air-to-ground assault plan. But not everything vanished into smoke. Some debris still rained across the area, and one missile pierced through the haze, igniting a small fire near the harbor zone. It was a harsh reminder of war's reality. The massive fuel depot and main pier, the very objectives that the Russian Ministry of Defense had aimed for, remained intact. At that very moment, the air defense network proved decisive. It was not merely a passive shield, but an active defense ecosystem, turning potential devastation at sea into thin wisps of smoke fading in the upper air. 8 launched missiles had become little more than brief flashes of fire in the sky. Even as the white intercept explosions lingered above Berdyansk, another command was issued. Defense would no longer be enough. The counterattack had begun. At 9:55 a.m., the Coastal Command Center gave the go-ahead to launch Operation Sunny. 5 F-16 fighter jets roared skyward, their thunderous engines slicing through the air, not for display, but for precision strike. As the aircraft surged overhead, their sound cut through the atmosphere like blades of steel. The combat radius of the F-16, depending on configuration, reached up to 560 miles, each capable of carrying several tons of ordnance. In this mission, they were armed with 2 AGM-88 HARM anti-radiation missiles. Each missile weighed around 285 pounds. Once the F-16s entered their designated search zone, they didn't fly solo. They moved as a coordinated Predator pack, guided by radar data and intelligence relayed from the Patriot system. Inside the cockpit, the exact coordinates of the missile frigate were locked in. Within 5 minutes, pilots confirmed the coordinates, locked targets, and armed for strike. The operation was neither reckless nor impulsive. It was a precisely calculated attack. At 10:02 a.m., aboard the frigate Admiral Karpov, sailors were still celebrating, believing they had destroyed the Ukrainian fuel depot and severed the army's supply line. Then, a warning. Out of nowhere, black F-16s, like shadows, dove from the clouds. Alarm screamed across the Staragushchi-class frigate. The crew panicked, scattering like birds before a predator. The close-in defense system activated instantly. Redut launchers fired blazing streaks of counter missiles. The AK-630 autocannon spun at full velocity, while the single launcher prepared to fire its P-800 anti-ship missiles in retaliation. But it was already too late. The F-16s descended like razor-sharp blades of a hunter. 3 aircraft, once locked on target, released their payloads simultaneously. Explosions tore across the hull. A brutal instant of annihilation. The ship's structure collapsed. As black smoke billowed high into the sky, the vessel buckled in half. Metal twisted and shrieked under unbearable heat. Shards of steel rained down like molten hail. After the direct hit, the firefighting system automatically engaged. Valves burst open, flooding the deck with coolant gas. Crew fought desperately to cool the melting steel, but every effort proved futile. Flames spread rapidly toward the auxiliary engine bay, igniting the missile control room. Adjacent launch tubes overheated and shut down. A chain reaction had begun, slowly consuming the entire ship. The proud warship was now turning into a heap of twisted steel at sea. But the disaster wasn't over. 2 more missiles struck. The crew's panic had barely subsided when the ship was struck by 2 more devastating blows. The damage level soared to catastrophic limits. Pilots reported mission accomplished and transmitted confirmation to command. Subsequent battle assessments verified the Admiral Karpov frigate had suffered severe destruction. Its combat capability was completely lost, irrecoverable. The F-16 fighters circled overhead, observing in silence. There were no cheers, no triumph. They returned to base quietly, disciplined, like warriors who had fulfilled their duty. Beneath the waves, the Admiral Karpov still burned faintly, black smoke curling upward, marking its grave across the water's surface. What began as a routine naval operation had turned into a brutal test of tactics and politics alike. Judging by the outcome, the verdict was undeniable. A missile-laden warship, armed with cutting-edge systems, was rendered powerless in under 30 minutes of combat. Completely stripped of its fighting capacity, the assault on Berdyansk port failed to achieve its intended strategic goal. Most of the missiles were intercepted midair, while the attackers suffered heavy losses from the aerial counterstrike. The port of Berdyansk had withstood what was meant to be a decisive blow. Civilian casualties were minimized, and the vital supply chain along the Sea of Azov remained largely intact. From a tactical standpoint, the event reaffirmed 2 core principles. First, the effectiveness of long-range naval strikes depends not on explosive yield or range, but on the ability to penetrate layered air defense. When data fusion between sensors and interceptor systems works seamlessly, a storm of missiles can be turned into bursts of light in the sky. Second, in this scenario, the F-16 fighters armed with guided munitions executed a counterstrike that redefined the balance of naval warfare. Fast and precise, capable of turning an enemy attack ship into a target forced to retreat or be destroyed. Air superiority, therefore, becomes the factor that decides the Navy's fate. In terms of cost and strategic balance, the lesson cuts even deeper. A naval asset worth hundreds of millions of dollars, when faced with a modern air defense network backed by allied technology, reveals just how fragile it truly is. Without camouflage tactics, deception, or air cover, the deterrent power of ship-launched cruise missiles is severely diminished. Therefore, when deploying warships for long-range strikes within zones covered by enemy air defense networks, commanders must act with caution. Every operation demands a careful cost-benefit analysis to balance risk against reward. And on the strategic scale, a single missile frigate, launched, intercepted, and destroyed, can trigger a global chain reaction. It accelerates debates on arms transfers, air defense cooperation, data link integration, and personnel training. It also reshapes the degree of direct involvement by allied nations. On the diplomatic front, stakeholders now possess a stronger rationale for coordination and justification for military support. Meanwhile, the aggressor is forced to reevaluate its reliance on naval power as a coastal deterrence tool, along with the political and military risks it carries. In summary, this event stands as a vivid example of the modern age of coordinated warfare, where information acquisition, sensor fusion, and integrated defense response outweigh caliber or missile range. And ultimately, it is those factors that decide who controls the skies. Within just a few minutes, the side that can optimize its sensor network and accelerate reaction and decision speed will inevitably gain the upper hand in the strategic contest.